All right, so let's jump into 2014. Move to San Francisco, and you are launching Uber for Business. There's a lot of people listening right now that are going to be B2C to B businesses, such that they've either set up a marketplace or they set up a B2C business that they want to grow. They want to grow to a B2B business. Walk through that launch of Uber for Business, and maybe you could take us through the journey of some of the different phases you had to go through in order to build it out.
Yeah, so I moved to San Francisco in late April, early May 2014. What was happening was Uber for Business in some ways was almost more reactive to what was happening in the market. The people were starting to ride for business purposes in droves. So you would use Uber on a Friday night, and then you would go to to the airport on a Monday morning, and instead of opting for a taxi or the train, you were like, actually, I'm going to use that thing I used the last 3 Friday nights and worked great. And I'm going to expense it. And so companies were actually seeing you'd have a travel manager or expense manager who administrator of some capacity or whatever, some kind at a company, and they'd see, what is this Uber thing? Oh, whoa, we've spent blank crazy amounts of money on this, or it was blank crazy number of expense transactions last month. And then they Google it, and it would be Uber is illegal, insurance, craziness, getting shut down. And they would freak out, and they would send an email to the company and say, Uber is now banned. Like, you can't use Uber.
Wow.
And so
that's a challenge.
Uber for Business was sort of both a policy, hey, we think your employees should be able to use this. Here's our insurance. Here's our safety policies. Here's everything else that you need to know about that will get you comfortable with us riding. And let's get on the phones with your legal teams. Let's get on the phone with your insurance people, whatever else. Let's ink some whatever that we need to make sure you're good with this. And let's actually launch an awesome policy. And then it was also, hey, there's a massive opportunity for us to grow the business if we make this awesome. And then people are expensing this like crazy. So let's build out some technology that makes it easier for people to use Uber for business purposes. And so myself and a few engineers, a couple other people started to run at this project. And we ended up building a big business. Billions of dollars will go through this platform this year. It's global. We have hundreds of people on it. We've got multiple products. We've got integrations, at the consumer level that make it easier for people to switch between rides. We've got easier ways for people to expense rides. We've got products for small teams, big teams. We've got enterprise products. We've got offshoots like Uber Events where you can buy promo codes, Uber Health, which allows you to ride, allows like rides to be HIPAA compliant and, ride from hospital or nursing homes or something like that. And so, it's crazy. It's awesome. And, it's definitely a thing. At the same time, it was crazy hard. It's by far, it's not by any means, it's huge. It's great, but building a B2B business at a consumer company is supremely difficult. And I think the speed and demand that naturally comes from people that are used to consumer stuff versus how long it takes to build out B2B functionality is brutal. And so, I think what we got into was some tailspins at times where the expectations were just misaligned, and the time it should take to grow a B2B product from scratch to working with a Fortune 500 company is actually a long time. But if you've got a consumer mindset and you're one of the fastest growing companies ever, the expectation is you can work with a Fortune 500 company like day 3. And that's not a thing. And so, and then, I think the other piece was that Uber was awesome. And so we were in some ways competing with ourselves. Was there really a need for an enterprise product? Which is a bit of an existential thing that I still don't totally know the answer to. And obviously I've got a lot of ideas for what it can be, but it was a very unique thing, and I think we did build a lot of those things that did sort of work with the consumer side then. But it's a difficult challenge, and we worked really hard at it and learned a ton. But it was it was a learning in a lot of ways, and it wasn't easy.
Cool. Give us two things that you did that you guys think you ended up doing really well that were some of the difference makers, and then we'll talk about two of the biggest things you learned as well.
I mean, feeding the beast on this consumer side. So things that just people are doing a thing already. Make that thing easier. Make that thing more awesome. Don't try and change behavior or create new hurdles or whatever. It seems obvious, but like it's totally not when you're in the belly of the beast. I think then other commercial applications of Uber was really fascinating because again, you're creating new use cases, not displacing or getting in the way of.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Uber is such a massive, crazy platform that now and it's starting to happen, which is great. But like connections with partnering with mass transit, partnering with commercial real estate, Uber pool by companies to actually decrease traffic and actually get people pooling together. I mean, those are some of the sort of the Uber Health stuff, hospital visits, the amount of non-emergency medical transport is just massive businesses, unreliable today. I think these are areas that are really like the commercialization of the Uber platform that are just sort of just scratching the surface of what that is today.